Olá, eu me chamo Rubem Nilson, sou setorista da TV Corinthians. Vamos com a coletiva de Lingard.
Boa noite a todos. Satisfação estar com vocês novamente. Hoje, para que a gente possa apresentar o Lingard, a gente vai desejar para ele boa sorte e que ele seja bem-vindo ao Corinthians. Welcome to Corinthians. Satisfação em tê-lo aqui junto conosco. É uma satisfação novamente apresentar mais um jogador que vem crescer junto com o Corinthians, desenvolver, para que a gente possa tranquilamente trabalhar durante este ano aqui, durante o Campeonato Brasileiro, a Libertadores e Copa do Brasil. Um abraço a todos, satisfação em recebê-lo aqui, tá?
Boa noite a todos e todas. Uma alegria a gente estar aqui hoje na Neo Química Arena, com tantas pessoas da imprensa cobrindo essa apresentação. Isso é legal, isso mostra a importância, a grandeza da vinda do Jesse, que gerou uma repercussão internacional, né? Vários países comentando a chegada dele ao Corinthians. E a gente está muito feliz de poder concretizar, viver isso. Um atleta que mais de 200 jogos na Premier League, jogo em Copa do Mundo com gol pela seleção inglesa, semifinalista de Copa do Mundo, um atleta que teve uma presença muito marcante no Manchester United e de outras equipes do futebol inglês, atuou no mais alto nível do futebol mundial e tinha propostas para outras equipes, né, inclusive da Premier League, da Holanda, e escolheu o Corinthians. Jesse Lingard escolheu o Corinthians. Eu conversei com ele bastante durante esse processo e ele teve todo o cuidado, o zelo, a paciência da condução de um processo de contratação, porque ele queria estar aqui. E a presença dele aqui já deu para notar como ele veio com alegria, como ele veio com o coração cheio de gratidão, como ele gosta do povo brasileiro, já deu para perceber que ele gosta do samba, da música, da alegria das pessoas aqui do Brasil, né? Especialmente, lógico, a torcida do Corinthians, que abraçou ele muito bem. E tenho assim, a certeza de que ele vai fazer um grande trabalho e vai marcar a época aqui no Corinthians. Então, feliz demais pela presença dele. Welcome here, como o presidente falou, fazer o mesmo, né? E you'll be happy here.
Obrigado, presidente Osmar Stabile. Obrigado, executivo de futebol Marcelo Paz. Em instantes, a gente inicia a entrevista coletiva aqui do Jesse Lingard. Vamos dar início à entrevista coletiva agora. Podem fazer as perguntas em português e o Jesse está com um fone, então ele vai ouvir tudo em inglês lá. Vamos lá.
Jesse, boa noite. Luiz Fabiani, da Rádio Bandeirantes. Certamente, antes de assinar com o Corinthians, você teve algum contato com o Memphis Depay, que foi seu companheiro de time no Manchester United, alguém que você certamente tem uma relação que já dura alguns anos. Com esse contato inicial com o Memphis Depay, quais referências que ele te passou a respeito do Corinthians e quais dessas referências te fizeram tomar a decisão de jogar no Brasil, jogar no Corinthians?
Wait, I can't hear, sorry.
Memphis, Jesse, when you signed for Corinthians, certainly you talked to Memphis Depay before taking your decision, and certainly he said a lot of references about Corinthians, and many of them made you sign for the club. Which of them made you most interested in coming to Corinthians and wearing this jersey?
No, I spoke to Memphis a little bit, just about the club and how the club is, and I've always known Corinthians to be, the biggest club in Brazil. So, for me it was a no-brainer, to come here, and since I've been here, I've seen how big the fan base is, how passionate the fans are, which is amazing to see, and I'm really motivated to be on the pitch with the boys and help them win.
What? Jesse, good evening. I'm going to try in English. If
Okay.
you don't understand, we can try again. On the December 31st, it's a different question. You posted on your Instagram a list of what I believe was a New Year's resolutions of words from 2026, and I'm going to read them for you if you don't remember. But you wrote alignment, momentum, opportunity, courage, transformation, focus, growth, risk, and breakthrough. I was wondering where this movement fits within those words in your life, and why did you pick this challenge to come to Brazil, and also if you could fit them on those words as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the words, mean everything about this move. Like I say, I'm eternally grateful for Marcelo, the president, the coach, for having me here. It's a real honor, and for me, it's just all about growth, and it's a new chapter for me. Obviously, I've come here to win trophies. I think that's the main thing. Fans of a club like Corinthians, the expectation is very big. So, for me, it's more pressure to win trophies, but I enjoy pressure.
Lingard, here on your left. Henrique Vilhote, central de mão. Lingard, you play in Manchester United in competitions like Champions League, UEFA Europa League. You played in the AFC Champions League in FCCU. Here in Corinthians, you're going to play in Libertadores, one of the competitions with the most physical game. How that feels to you, playing the league like Libertadores, physical, if you have a body, no, not so physical?
Yeah, I don't mind physical, I think that's one of the biggest competitions to play in. So, for me, it's as a player, you want to be playing in the biggest games against the biggest players. So this competition is really important for obviously me and the team to win. But I don't mind physical. I played in the Championship, Premier League. Went out to Korea, and all them places are physical as well. But since I've been in Brazil, it's a lot more intense. Especially in training. Seeing it's very intense. But I enjoy the challenge, and I'm going to enjoy this journey.
Lingard here. My name is Lili Nascimento from ESPN. Welcome to Brazil. How can you help the team, and how would you describe yourself in the pitch? Thank you.
On the pitch, I'm always happy. I always like to, create chances, score goals, make assists. But on the flip side, I'm a hard worker. I'll run for my teammate. I'll do anything to win the game, and I think that's important because throughout my career, I've always been able to adapt to certain situations, certain games. My stats of running have always been good, so playing 90 minutes week in, week out will not be a problem. And then, like I say, on the other hand, it's just about technical ability and IQ of reading the game and understanding football is where I'm good at. And if I can provide assists and goals and help the team, that's the main goal.
See, hello, good night over here. Welcome to Brazil. About that question, you said, learning how the game is played here. That's what I wanted to ask you about. You were in South Korea the last 2 years. It's a different type of game, I imagine, than what you were used to in Premier League. And coming to Brazil, what do you know already about the Brazilian game, the way it's played here, the clubs, the management, the league itself? Do you feel like it's a type of game that can make you shine, that can make your game, how can I say, prosper? Is that it?
Yeah, possibly, yeah. Yeah, like I say before, I didn't see much of the Brazilian league, but, since I've been here, I watched a few games before I came, the Corinthian games, and like I say, it's physical, it's intense, but, it's also tactical at the same time, so, for me, it's just about adapting to the coach's playing style, and, we're going to have a conversation on, where he wants me to play and how the team play, and like I say, it's just for me to adapt to his way of playing, really.
Lingard, here in Portuguese. He's working. Okay. Bianca Molina,
Yeah.
canal Gold. Yes? Falando ainda sobre o teu futebol e como tu podes agregar ao Corinthians, queria falar exatamente sobre teu posicionamento em campo. Hoje tu chegas aqui com 33 anos, depois de duas temporadas pelo futebol sul-coreano. Em qual posição, nesse teu momento de carreira e também de condicionamento físico, tu te identificas melhor? Tu entendes que pode funcionar nesse time do Corinthians como um segundo atacante, como um homem de meio mais centralizado, aberto pela esquerda, enfim, como tu achas que tu pode agregar para o time? Obrigada.
I think it obviously depends on formation, but I've always been a player that's kind of versatile and can play multiple positions, right wing, attacking midfielder, striker, left wing. So I feel like it's probably down to the coach of what formation he plays. But for me, I can adapt to any of the frontline positions, to be honest.
Jesse, over here. Beatriz Mainetti, meu timão. You are the first English player to play in the main league here in Brazil. At the same time, we have a new culture of European players coming to Brazil to play in our football leagues. And I wanted to know, how did you see the Brazilian league before your move to Corinthians? And I wanted to know if you think that your arrival here can open some doors for other English players to play in Brazil. Thank you.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't know I was the first English player until obviously a few weeks after being here, which is obviously a big honour. And of course, I heard about the league before. I heard it's a big league, big teams, competing at the highest level. In which, in that case, I wanted to come here as well. And I'm sure it can open, many doors for many foreign players to come and play. And like you say, a lot of the teammates, said like you'll enjoy your time in Brazil and you won't want to leave, So yeah, it can definitely open doors for more European players.
Jesse here, Vitor Boni from Jovem Pan. My question is related to the previous one. It was unusual for us, like around 10 years ago, to see this kind of movements, European players coming to Brazil. Now we have a ton of examples, you, Memphis, we have Saul, Cedric Soares, and other ones. Why do you think it changed the scenario for another European players? Why do you think European players are seeing Brazil as a good market now? And in your particular case, not only Corinthians, why did you consider Brazil as a good destination for that moment in your career?
I feel like football's always evolving. I think football's always changing. A lot of people were surprised with my South Korean move. And like I say, sometimes, I don't want to stay in one place and get comfortable. I'd rather go out of my comfort zone and try new things. And like I say, coming to Corinthians, the biggest club, want to win titles, and like I say, I'm still motivated. Had a lot of offers on the table, but I wanted to still play at a high level and come here and win things. So I think depending on the player and their mentality, for me, it was just about coming to one of the biggest clubs in Brazil and winning trophies.
Here, Vitor Reves from Bate-Fundo Esportivo. You came through a club like Man United, where pressure is constant. What kind of mentality do you bring to Corinthians, knowing that this club have also this level of intensity?
Yeah, I mean, Corinthians is the biggest club, in Brazil. So, pressure is always there. The expectation of winning is always there, and it's not going to happen, all the time. But from what I've heard, the fans will sing all game, win, lose or draw. So for me, I enjoy the pressure. I enjoy the expectation. I've done it in my past before, and like I say, I've come here to help the team and win trophies for the fans.
Em português. Boa noite, Bismarck Rodrigues, Rádio Coringão. Eu gostaria de saber o que você está mais ansioso para encontrar do Corinthians, da torcida do Corinthians, do Campeonato Brasileiro. O que você pensa, o que você mais espera que pode acontecer, por exemplo, hoje aqui na Neo Química Arena, né? É a primeira oportunidade, já como jogador do Corinthians, desse encontro com a torcida, desse Campeonato Brasileiro. O que passa na sua mente nesse momento? Obrigado.
Yeah, I've heard and I've seen many videos of Corinthian fans, home games, and I just want to be, like I say, I'm hungry, I'm motivated to be out there, and obviously trying to, be on the pitch with the boys and enjoy the atmosphere. I heard the atmosphere is, crazy out there, and like I say, at half-time, I'm sure it'll be a special feeling for me to finally see the fans and embrace the fans, and them to embrace me as well.
Hi, Lingard, em português, por favor. Você chegou ao Brasil e já conheceu alguns pontos, né, daqui de São Paulo. Como tem sido a sua adaptação com o país e como o Memphis tem te ajudado em relação a isso?
Yeah, I love Sao Paulo already. I've been here maybe a week and a half, 2 weeks. But I love it already. I visited the favelas yesterday, which is an amazing feeling to see, the favelas and the community and the people. I think it's always important to, anywhere I go, different countries, to, go and see the culture and experience that. And Memphis has helped a lot, Obviously, I've known him since Manchester United, and, since I came, he said, anything you need, I can always speak to him and always message him. And like I said, we've already been for dinner together. So, I'm sure he'll show me, many more places.
Lingard, aqui, em português, please. Gustavo Fortes, identidade corintiana. Eu queria saber de você. Você falou muitas vezes que o Corinthians é o maior clube do Brasil. Quando chegou a proposta do Corinthians, qual foi o seu sentimento? E se você já tinha escutado do Corinthians antes na Europa, qual foi a sua primeira impressão e o que mais te surpreendeu do Corinthians? Obrigado.
Yeah, I was so happy. It's like I say, it's the biggest club, and when an offer comes on the table like this, it's hard to turn down. And previous to that, I had obviously conversations with Marcelo and the coach, and we spoke a lot about winning mentality. And I said to the coach, I'm still motivated, I'm still humble, I'm still hungry to win games and win trophies. And the coach had the same mindset, and I think after that conversation, for me it was a no-brainer. The coach was on the same wavelength as me, as winning mentality and winning trophies and winning games.
Yes, in Portuguese, please. Portuguese, please. Marcelo Paz disse, quando te apresentou aqui, que você tinha propostas de outros clubes da Europa, de voltar a jogar na Premier League, de jogar na Holanda. Quando você deixa o CU, eles tinham uma proposta de renovação contratual e, mesmo assim, você optou por deixar lá e buscar outro clube. Por que você viu o Corinthians como esse clube ideal para jogar, visando, mesmo com a possibilidade de voltar à Europa, e se de alguma forma um possível retorno à seleção, jogar uma Copa do Mundo, é um dos motivos que fez você jogar aqui, porque aqui você sabe que pode ter uma regularidade de jogos, de número em campo e até em desempenho, por favor.
Yeah, as a free agent, it can be difficult, you know. Obviously, after leaving Seoul, you know, becoming a free agent, you know, it can be difficult. Obviously, you know, there's offers that come in, you know, some that are real, some that are half real. So, you know, there's a lot that goes into deals, and especially, you know, concrete deals. And, you know, being a free agent, you can kind of get, you know, messed about in that situation. And, you know, training alone, you know, I had to be disciplined, you know, throughout that time. It was a long time. My last game was 10th of December, and, you know, I really had to be disciplined. I think, you know, during that time it was a lot of stress. But like I say, to be training, you know, day in, day out, you know, in the gym, on the pitch, you know, and just to be ready for when a team come in. And like I say, when Corinthians came, it's a no-brainer, you know. And like I say, I had offers from Europe and back in England, but, you know, I wanted to try something different. And, you know, like I say, Corinthians is the biggest team, so, you know, to come here is a real honor.
Jesse here. Welcome to Brazil. I'm Murilo Gomes, 14 Info Sport Club. I want to know about your physical condition. When will you be able to play your physical form? When will you be fit?
Yeah, I'm physically getting there. You know, training's been intense, training's been good. I've been training with the team. Obviously adapting, you know, I'll have to adapt fairly quickly, but at the moment, hopefully, you know, next game, I've still got some documents to arrive. So my team and the club are organising that, but, you know, hopefully the next game.
Yes, good night. We know a lot about Memphis because he always talks about family, legacy, songs, music. And how about you? How about the Jazz? Who are the Jazz out of the field?
Me, I'm just happy. I'm bubbly. Always like to bring good energy and good vibes. You know, whether it be in the dressing room with the team or, you know, off the field. I always have. I've always been a bubbly character. You know, from young. Obviously, you know, I like fashion, and, you know, I do my YouTube as well. And like I say, I'm just a happy guy, humble guy. You know, want to do the best for my family. I think it's important. My family have been there from day one, so, you know, I want to do it for them. And like I say, you know, being here is a special moment. And, you know, at first it takes time to warm up and, you know, get used to the language and adapt. But I'm sure you'll see the real Jesse Lingard very soon.
Here, in Portuguese, please. Jesse, bem-vindo ao Brasil. Matheus Reis, da Rádio Dimensão Esportiva. A gente sabe que aqui no Brasil nós temos um calendário muito extenso de jogos, né? Tem times que chegam a fazer 70, 80 jogos por temporada. Como que é essa questão para você e como que vai ser o seu preparamento, né? A sua preparação para encarar esse calendário vasto daqui do Brasil?
Yeah, for me, I don't mind, you know. I think the more games, you know, the more competitions that we're in, it's a chance to win more trophies, and, you know, the more games, the better for me. You know, last year, you know, with Seoul, I came up to nearly 70 games, so, you know, for me, that's not a problem. And obviously, we have a big squad, so I'm sure there'll be a lot of rotation. But, you know, as a player, you want to play, you know, every game and try and help the team. And like I say, there's a game every 3 days, so I feel like recovery is very important. You know, your nutrition is very important. Sleep is important. So it's just about how you manage your body, you know, after the game to prepare for the next game.
See over here, Julia Fernanda from Rádio Craque Neto. What do you know about Brazil before you come here? Like, what are you excited to do besides football? What are you excited to eat? The food, places you want to go? What are you excited to do? Thank you.
The weather, to be honest, as well. I think the weather is important. I know it's obviously hot all year round, and UK we don't get, you know, much sun. But I think, you know, I'll have, you know, a lot of people around me to take me places, take me to the sites, enjoy the good food. I don't know too much about it at the moment, but I'm sure I'll get around to that.
Jesse, here, em português, please. José Eduardo, agência Timão. Bom, nos últimos dias você chegou a visitar o Parque São Jorge, conhecer um pouco da história do Corinthians, então eu gostaria de saber o que mais te chamou a atenção, o que mais te fascinou nessa visita.
I think the amount of trophies that Corinthians won, I think it's amazing to see. I knew the Corinthians was a big team, before I came, but visiting the museum, I realized how big it is and how many trophies and what the history is of Corinthians, and I think it was 23 years from 1977. That's when they won a trophy. I only learned that. I didn't know before I picked my number that happened. But there's a lot of history around the Corinthians, and like I say, you want to create more history by being here, by winning trophies. And like you say, you want to leave a legacy here.
Em português, please. Além da sua vinda, repercutiu muito as suas comemorações. Dá para ver que você é bem animado, sempre diversifica as suas comemorações ali. Só que tem uma que é marcante, né? E a minha dúvida é, desde quando Lingard faz a comemoração, né, que você sempre faz? Desde que ano, desde quando? E por que Michael Jackson ali nas suas comemorações? Você pode comentar um pouquinho sobre a origem dessas comemorações?
Yeah, obviously this came about in, I think, 2017. I was trying to think of like a hand gesture to kind of replicate, a JL, and obviously eventually I come to the JL. So I had that in 2017. I trademarked it as well. And then, with my other celebrations, back in the day, I used to listen to a lot of music, like I still do now, and certain dances that I used to see, and obviously Michael Jackson's been still is one of my favorite artists. I know all his songs, all his dances, and when you score, you have to celebrate, and scoring is an amazing feeling, and you want to celebrate with the fans and your teammates. So for me, celebrating is just a part of football. It's that enjoyment of football, and you want to entertain at the same time.
Esse aqui no fundo, Guilherme Pradella da Rádio CBN, vou perguntar em português. Na tua carreira, vários times na Inglaterra que você passou, que tipo de experiência que você acha que pode trazer desse período de Inglaterra aqui para o futebol brasileiro, mais especificamente pelo Corinthians?
I think this experience really. Being in the Premiership for a long time, you gain so much experience to play with so many great players over the years. And like I say, I think, experience is big. Last year with Seoul, I became captain, so, I can kind of be a leader, for the team in that way as well. Like I say, every team that I go to, I always like to help the young players. I think it's important that, the young players, they understand the game, they understand formation and tactics, and it's not just on the pitch, it's off the pitch as well. I think it's important that you can have a bond off the pitch because it also helps on the pitch.
Lingard, perguntar em português. Miguel Arcanjo do Tic Tac Sports. Eu gostaria de saber qual era a sua percepção do futebol brasileiro antes de chegar ao Corinthians e o que mais te chamou a atenção no primeiro contato com o clube e com o país novo.
No, I knew Brazilian football was big anyway. And like I say, it's going to be a new experience. For me to be here, and like I say, I can adapt to certain situations. So adapting here will be no problem. But like I say, I'm just motivated, hungry to be on the pitch, and help the team.
Here in Portuguese, please. Welcome to Brazil. Alguns torcedores nas redes sociais debateram bastante sobre a sua celebração com as iniciais de seu nome, o JL, porque tem um jogador do Palmeiras, que é o principal rival do Corinthians, que faz o mesmo. Está aqui a foto. Não sei se você já viu. O que você acha sobre isso? Ele é mais novo do que você. Se eu não me engano, tem 23 anos. Provavelmente já te viu jogando bastante também ainda na Europa. O que você pode falar sobre isso? Obrigada.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it on social media a lot, and I don't know. Maybe he see me do it, and obviously his initials are JL as well. So yeah, it's for me, I don't mind. He can do it if he wants. But like I say, I did it first. But yeah, it's up to him if he wants to do it. But it will always be mine.
Aqui, Lingard. Boa noite. Perguntar em português. Seja bem-vindo ao Brasil. És Alessandro, Rádio Firula. Primeiramente, eu queria te desejar boa sorte, sucesso com a camisa do Corinthians. Você vem de uma temporada na Coreia com uma minutagem muito grande de tempo de jogo e também de uma sequência de jogos também bastante contínua também. Mesmo assim, você chega no Corinthians com uma saúde física e técnica que impressionou tanto a comissão técnica como a comissão de preparo físico também. Eu gostaria de saber se isso realmente é um diferencial para que você realmente conquistar uma vaga no time titular e o que foi de essencial nessa preparação entre a temporada na Coreia até os seus primeiros treinos do Corinthians para que você mantivesse realmente esse mesmo preparo físico e técnico como se você estivesse ainda jogando lá na Coreia. Obrigado.
Obrigado. Like I say, discipline is very key, and like I say, becoming a free agent can be very difficult. And I knew, eventually I would sign for a team, and I didn't know when that was. So, after Korea, obviously the first few weeks I spent with my family, had vacation, and then obviously traveled to Dubai for 2 to 3 week training camp. And then came back to England, and I was training with my trainer in England for 2-3 weeks after that. So for me it was just about being disciplined, and when a team come calling, I knew I had to be ready from the start. And obviously coming to Corinthians, the season started a few weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. So I knew I had to be ready, whether it be Europe or whether it be Brazil. I knew I had to hit the ground running straight away.
Lingard, aqui no fundo, em português, por favor. Meu nome é Iago Rudá, sou repórter do site é.globo. Eu queria saber se você já teve Você falou um pouquinho sobre o seu posicionamento em campo, que você pode fazer múltiplas funções, mas se você já teve uma conversa específica com Dorival Júnior e com a comissão técnica sobre a melhor forma de ajudar o Corinthians ao longo da temporada. Obrigado.
I was meant to speak to the coach yesterday after training, but we both forgot somehow. But I will speak to the coach in the week. He can hear my thoughts, I can hear his thoughts. But for me, obviously, playing 10, I played 10, for 2 years in Korea. Don't mind playing left wing, but I think to get the best out of me, probably number 10. Or it depends what formation, to be honest. If it's 4-3-3, I don't mind playing in a free midfield off the left, or left wing, and then obviously other formations. Don't mind playing 10. So I feel like that's how you get the best out of me.
Good evening. Here, Portuguese, please. Bom, você é um jogador que já teve algum certo histórico de lesão. E aqui no Brasil nós temos uma certa discussão sobre gramado sintético. Temos alguns estádios com gramado sintético aqui no Brasil, do Palmeiras, do Atlético Mineiro, do Botafogo. Você tem algum problema com gramado sintético? Você tem uma opinião sobre?
I haven't had that many injuries really in my career, to be honest. But synthetic, I don't mind. For me, I don't mind. I can play synthetic, grass, sand, beach. it don't matter to me.
Em português,
seria mais uma curiosidade. Se você sabia que o Corinthians, o nome, surgiu de um time inglês?
Yeah, Manchester United. No, was it Manchester United?
Não entendi.
Ah, yeah, I wear the scarf.
Name it.
Yeah. Corinthians Casuals.
Sabia?
How much team in England? Ah, okay. I'm still learning.
Obrigado, Jesse. Obrigado a todos.
Deixe o seu like, o seu comentário e acione o sininho para receber as notificações e se inscreva em nosso canal. Seja membro, nos ajude a crescer. Até a próxima!